This is actually one of 7 historical performance pieces that we do about different movements and periods of U.S. history. And we put this one together specifically for this year because it's the 100th anniversary of the Bread and Roses textile strike that took place here in Massachusetts in Lawrence.
The idea and the energy for the whole project of these 7 different performance pieces that we've put together so far is that you can tell a very compelling story of the political history of the 20th century by singing the songs that were sung in the context of these struggles. And very few of these songs were written to be listened to. Most of these songs were written to be sung by masses of people, and we encourage you to take that as an example. And if you can pick up the thread or you hear a singable chorus, just belt it out. And we'd love to hear that. That would make us feel like we're really making progress here. We first performed this in January on the 100th anniversary of the strike. We first performed it in Lawrence. We've had the opportunity to perform this at the Everett Mill in Lawrence, which is the place where the strike began. And so we have really carried around this year from coast to coast as we've traveled around performing this piece, a real sense of our own political history here in Massachusetts. And what we're trying to do is to let the people of Lawrence of 100 years ago speak to you today through their songs, through their first-person narratives, and through the images that were captured at that time and are up on the screen today. On the morning of the 12th of January, 1912, the riot call was sounded on the bells of the City Hall at Lawrence, Massachusetts. The call required the presence of every police officer in the city, all the guardians of peace and property. The call came like a thunderbolt from a clear sky. Why this riot call, this rush from all directions?
Proclamation of the Striking Textile Workers of Lawrence, 1912. We hold that as useful members of society and as wealth producers, we have the right to lead decent and honorable lives. That we ought to have homes and not shacks. That we ought to have clean food and not adulterated food at high prices. That we ought to have clothes suited to the weather and not shoddy garments. That to secure sufficient food, clothing, and shelter in a society made up of a robber class on the one hand and a working class on the other hand, it is absolutely necessary for the toilers to band themselves together and form a union. We mean to make things over. We are tired of toil for naught, with but bare enough to live upon and ne'er an hour for thought. We want to feel the sunshine. We want to smell the flowers. We are sure that God has willed it, and we mean to have 8 hours. We're summoning our forces from shipyard, shop, and mill. 8 hours for work, 8 hours for rest, 8 hours for what we will. 8 hours for work, 8 hours for rest, 8 hours for what we will.
On the eve of the strike, not a single mill owner or textile stockholder lived in the city. On Thursday, January 11, 200 Polish women stopped work at the Everett Mill. They did not shout or walk out, just stood like statues beside their looms. Through an interpreter, they were asked why.
Not enough pay.
When they refused to work, they were ordered out. Throwing down their aprons, the women shut down their machines, marched out of the mill, and called for others to follow them. 1,000 looms were shut down. Fred Beal.
On Monday morning, January 12, the atmosphere in the Pacific Mill was tense with suppressed excitement. Patty Parker, petition in hand, called me to one side.
Young man, I see your name heads this list. Did you put it there?
Yes, I did, because I don't think we should get a wage cut.
Now, you shouldn't have your name with these foreigners.
I work with them, don't I?
Yes, but you want to get a better position soon, don't you? Stand by the company. I'll cross off your name.
I'm going on strike if the others do.
All right, young man. If you do, you will never get work again at the Pacific Mills, and I will see to it that you are blacklisted at other mills and every other name on this list.
The thought of never being able to get work again in any of the mills made me feel miserable. Where else could I get a job? I had to make a decision in 30 minutes before the paymaster came round. When the great moment came, the first in line nervously opened their pay envelopes and found the company had deducted 2 hours' pay. Then all hell broke loose in the spinning room. Strike! All out! Strike! We piled into Canal Street singing and shouting. It was snowing. As we come marching, marching in the beauty of the day, a million darkened kitchens, 1,000 mill lofts gray, are touched by all the radiance that a sudden sun discloses. For the people hear us singing, bread and roses, bread and roses.
Massive waves of strikers wove their way up and then down Canal Street. Men and women made stump speeches, sending squadrons of workers through all the other mills to recruit supporters and shut down machines. A Massachusetts commission had determined that the lowest possible wage for human living conditions for an individual was $8.28 per week. During the pay week preceding January 12, 1912, the payroll amounted to an average of $6 for the week. This is for a full week only. Often when work is slack, such wages as $2.30 and $2.70 a week are the rule.
On Wednesday morning, January 17th, a few dozen strikers gathered. Rallying behind a large American flag, they set out, cheering and shouting to everyone they passed. As the parade went by, hundreds joined it. By the time it turned onto Essex Street and flowed into downtown, the parade numbered 10,000. The parade filled downtown from sidewalk to sidewalk for 4 full blocks. On Thursday, another parade of 10,000 tramped through the snow.
A full week had passed since the original uproar. 4 more companies of militia reported for duty on Saturday, January 20th, bringing the total to 800 men.
Proclamation of the Striking Textile Workers of Lawrence, 1912. The Massachusetts legislature has refused to use any of the money of the state to help the strikers. They have voted $150,000 to maintain an army of militiamen ready to shoot down innocent men, women, and children who are out on strike for a living wage.
A few days after the strike began, Arturo Giovannitti, an Italian poet and orator, came to Lawrence from New York City to take charge of strike relief. Relief committees, a network of soup kitchens, and food distribution stations were set up. Volunteer doctors gave medical care. The problem of relief was so efficiently handled that during the 10-week strike there was virtually no wavering whatsoever in the strikers' ranks. On Friday, January 26, Joseph Etter was invited to a private meeting with President William Wood, the most prominent of the mill owners. Etter pressed the strikers' demands. Wood refused to meet any of them. Disgusted, but not discouraged, Etter told strikers to prepare for a long struggle.
Proclamation of the Striking Textile Workers of Lawrence, 1912. These mill owners have refused to meet the committee of the strikers. They have refused to consider their demands in any way that is reasonable or just. They have, in the security of their sumptuous offices behind stout mill gates and rows of bayonets and policemen's clubs, defied the state, city, and public. In the good old picket line, in the good old picket line, We'll make Mr. Lowe wear overalls and swear off drinking wine.